Whoa! Holy cow! Sorry, I think I died there. It hasn't been like 2 weeks or anything, has it?
No, a little bit over a month actually.
Oh my gosh.
With
Okay.
what's that gold around your neck?
Just my blood. Don't worry about it.
And with that, welcome back to this month's episode of the 800s. I am your co-host, Alex, and you just heard from my recently revived co-host, Adam. And as always, thank you to the man behind the scenes making it happen, Alain. And with that, let's quickly run through our opening plugs. We can get to talking.
Sure thing. If you joined us for our pre-show, you heard some music that was Fearless First by Incompetech. You should check out everything they have at incompetech.filmmusic.io. They got a lot of cool scores, so check them out. Otherwise, we are the DM's Table. Head over to dmstable.com to find out more about us and what we do. But enough of that. Let's get right into what we're doing here tonight.
All right, so this month on the 800s, we'll be discussing our book for Black History Month, The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. The arrival of this year's ritual of purity looms large over the kingdom of Otera. To be found pure is to be accepted as a woman and a full-fledged member of the community. To be found impure is to be cast out or worse. At 16 years old, it is Decca's year to be tested, along with every girl her age. All she wants is acceptance, but there's a fierceness within her that flies in the face of all that is deemed good and pure. When the dreaded death shriek beasts raid her village and interrupt the ritual, Decca summons a power from within her that saves her and many others, but in the process, it's found that her blood does not run red, but instead runs gold, the color of demons, the impure, the color of the Gilded Ones.
Yes, how unfortunate. If this is your first time joining us tonight, first off, welcome. Let me give you a rundown of how our show works. We are a discussion show. What that means is Alex or myself will pose a topic or question to discuss. Chat, feel free to weigh in on the topic or question in chat. Alex and myself will give our opinion on it and then take a quick peek at chat and see what all y'all have to say. And we'll also be keeping an eye out for any topics or questions that you guys might want to discuss. And we'll throw those up there for everyone to chat about whenever the conversation gets a little lully. That's pretty much it.
Also, quick disclaimer, while this is we try to keep it family friendly sometimes, this is a show for adults and we cover adult topics and themes despite the YA novels that we keep reading. So bring your kids around at your own discretion. Also, we're trying to create a fun and supportive community over here at DM's Table where people can feel free to enjoy the things that they enjoy without any fear of judgment or anything like that. So in some, be nice or fuck off.
With that, let's get right into the show and talk about what you thought of the beginning of this book.
Yeah, so first impressions. Right off the bat, this book felt like about as YA as it feels. It was very simple, straightforward, and I was immediately like, nope, there's something wrong with this world fundamentally, and like the fact that they are leaning into this purity and impurity thing so heavily right from like the very first two sentences. I already know it's bullshit. I just don't know how it's bullshit. Um, uh, yeah, so I found myself kind of playing detective more than really like sitting in the story, at least initially, but eventually it does start to grab hold of you as the narrative gets going. But the initial impressions are like, yep, this is a typical YA novel with like an interesting potential setting. How about you?
Yeah, this book was a survey of cliche.
Yeah.
Yeah, it starts out, with your typical chosen one storyline.
Mhm.
I'd say within the first few chapters, it seems fairly predictable that we're going to find out that the accepted mentality of the Gilded Ones is something that's been buried by history. Um, yeah, I was curious to see how it would develop, and I enjoyed the introduction of the death streaks and the mystical "why won't she just die" acts and stuff. It did set the stage for some curious, what could this be? What could happen with this? What growth could potentially exist within this magic system? I was excited to see where it went. Um, yeah, but yeah, I think V.S. Drake said it. I think you said it too. Simple narrative perspective. Um, pretty basic from the get go, and I was looking for some ramp up as we progressed.
Yeah. Well, since you mentioned it, tropes abound. So, what ones really stood out to you? I know you mentioned the, chosen one storyline, and that can
Yeah.
be a part of it as well. But like, what ones stood out to you, and how did you feel that they were used? Because there's tropes that are exist, and we love them, and there's tropes exist, and we hate them, and it's different for everybody. I want to hear your take on the tropes and how they were used in this book.
Yeah, so right off the bat, you get the exiled one mixed with the chosen one. um,
Classic comedy.
followed up, yeah, followed up with star-crossed lovers once we get to the capital. Um, oh, there's also the main character was I don't know what this one's called, but like with the practically untouchable by some mystical power because she had like they couldn't find the way that she could die. Um,
I think that's it's a bit derogatory, but it is along the lines of Mary Sue, I think, because Mary Sue is it's usually tied to the fact that they are a woman, which I get in this case, technically that's the case, but the like unkillable part is uh, usually also tied to like a beloved by all type of thing with
yeah,
Mary Sue's, and that is in clashing with the um outcast trope, you know.
yeah. But no, I think tropes can play out pretty well as long as you pick one and don't overload with it. I think where this book strayed a little bit too far away from where I would normally like the story to live is when we kept piling on the tropes.
Mhm.
Uh, it felt more like cherry picking other stories instead of creating a unique work of art.
Yeah, there's I would agree with that to an extent. I don't think it was necessarily picking from other stories, but none of it felt when it came to like the story structure and how tropes were used, none of them felt like used in a super unique way or in a way that made it feel like the author made that trope their own. So, or at least none that really came up to me. Uh, as far as tropes go, I know V.S. Drake mentioned the very anti-establishment bit of it, and that might be the closest that it gets to having a trope that is done in a unique way because it's clearly done from a very feminist perspective of what does it mean to be a woman who has these expectations of purity being, not seen, not heard, you know,
Yeah.
covered, and all these other things that are meant to suppress any inkling of power, independence, and overthrowing that. And I think that's the closest it gets to a trope that felt like it was used proper, like in a way that is potentially satisfying. I think the issue that I had with it is how long it takes to become satisfying, because it's not until like the last like two chapters, you know? And um so like in that way I don't think that was necessarily done poorly, but most of the rest of the tropes, and I don't know how many more there are in there other than, now that I think about it, Mary Sue trope does kind of apply, because like they're not necessarily liked from the get-go, but it takes like almost nothing for people to like them or other main characters, unless they're an antagonist. And she gets pushback from, I think, one person in all of the entire um what's the school called again?
I can't remember. Yeah.
um, sorry, there's a lot of names and places in this. But the war through Bara, I think. Yeah. But yeah, I think there's like one
Watching Bear.
person that yeah, like there's one person that gives her pushback of any kind, like realistically, that isn't, that is based on character, based on that other character, and not based on, I have information that you don't have, so I like you even though I'm secretly treating you like crap, or I have to overcome this establishment issue to like you, but it's not about your character or anything with the her love interest, which, none of it lasts long, and is the thing. And when you use stuff like that, I think there's a lot left on the table with these tropes of set up with the trope, but there's none of the emotional or plot payoff that you would hope would come from it. And there's a lot of potential tension there that is just kind of not gathered up and used to drive the story forward. It's kind of just like hand waved of like, well, this girl's the main character. People have to like her so I can move the story forward the way that I want. So, like, here's some tension for a chapter, and I'm going to resolve it in a hand wavy kind of way, you know? And that's where tropes, I think, become a problem, is, I don't want to say lazy writing, but it is sometimes a bit of a quick and dirty or simple way to, move things aside that the author's not interested in, which isn't always the best for the reader.
Yeah. Yeah, Via Strike mentioned that this was Forna's first published book, which is cool. I did see that this is book 1 of 3, so I'm assuming her other 3 are the 3 in this
Mhm.
series. The youth of the writer shows in this book with some classic first book stumbles.
That is good context to have. Thank you, V.S. Drake, for that.
Yeah.
Like, I knew it was the first book in the series of 3. I did not know it was her first ever. And I think V.S. Drake, uh, this book having decent bones, but it's got markers of inexperienced writing. I think that's an excellent way to put it.
Yeah, I think um I think this book, it really comes down to what you want to get out of a book.
Mhm.
Um, it's got cool concepts and a handful of characters that do some stuff. And um if you're looking for like deep meaning and some grand epiphanies to come out of this book, then you're probably going to be left wanting. If you're looking for something that's entertaining and a cool little uh concept, sorry, couldn't think of the word. If you're looking for something that's just a cool concept and wanted to play around with what all it could mean to be practically immortal, but you kind of die anyway, maybe this book is something for you.
Well, yeah, I think it's a YA novel that reads like a true YA novel. There's some that read and have complexity that reaches a broader audience, and I think this settles well within its target audience
Yeah.
with those. So, with that, did you have any topics, or maybe chat does?
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah,
So
what do you got?
V.S. Drake mentioned scene building on the low, a little on the low side. I'll set up a little payoff. Let's talk about that. How do you think Forna did in terms of setting up events and having them progress?
Um, I think it depends a little bit on what the setup was. I think that when it came to things like character development, that was something that I don't think was handled the best because you could see what the development was well before it was going to happen, and it either went super fast and felt unearned, or it came about after what felt like maybe a little bit too long trying to get to the point of it when you could tell what it was already. And I think honestly that's part of what ends up being an issue with some of the scenes in general is you can tell from the setup what the author wants to happen, and getting there isn't always the best, but you do get what the setup is clearly trying to give you. It's just the getting there was not always handled in ways that were the most compelling, for lack of a better word. Um, it there are scenes though that I think are handled really well, like that scene in the cave where they defeat the Death Streaks and where she finds God, I can't even remember the
The
cute
weird cat
little
thing.
the shapeshifter Ika or Isa, I think.
Yeah, I remember.
Um, anyway, I thought that was one that was handled really well. Of like, this is clearly going to be we're finally going to find out that there's something more behind the Death Streaks, because that had been like set up for a while, and
Yeah.
like from the very and I think that one was really handled well because there's a lot of really good subtle foreshadowing of like, hey, this feels a little out of place for something considering what I know. And you get these little pieces that build into something bigger that answers questions but also creates more questions. Ixa, that's what it is. Finally got it. The name the name of the shapeshifter. Anywho. uh I think I think that scene was probably one of the best pieces of setup, giving these little clues and these little bits that keep you going, giving an answer at the end that fulfills the thing that you were expecting in the beginning based on the foreshadowing, but also creates more questions in a way that can compel you to read more through the book. So there is so much potential, like V.S. Drake said, good bones there of like there's clearly like this author has the ability to write these scenes in that way, but I think a lot more of them would be like, here's the foreshadowing that's maybe a little bit too obvious. Delay, payoff that was the obvious thing that didn't really have a lot. Like, I got it at the beginning and it just kind of almost felt like, yeah, I know you told me, a chapter ago that this was going to happen. And it happened and now it's done. I think the best example of that is um probably like the training arcs are a lot like that, in this book for like each of the characters, like why they were picked. It just kind of felt like there should have been there was something potentially compelling there, but it just kind of was just kind of presented on a silver platter.
Yeah. What what I felt like for different scenes in this book is like it felt like Forna had specific ideas in mind about how she wanted certain scenes to go,
Hmm.
and she was just focused on getting to those points that she had already decided were going to happen. And I think three scenes kind of stand out that are different. The execution scene, or not the execution, the trial scene where they find out she bleeds gold. The the cat scene, and then the final cave scene, where it felt
Yeah.
like those three stand apart from all other scenes in that those scenes felt like the author was there experiencing the moment instead of trying to get through the moment to explain
Mhm.
something that's going to happen.
Yeah, V.S. Drake put it very similarly. They felt like Namina needed to learn to use her voice, but was using it as Deus Ex Machina rather than like what you said is just being in the story and help. And you can tell when an author does that, like when they're in their world, because it's a lot easier for us to feel transported into it. Which in the moments where she does, I agree. Like all three of the places that you mentioned are the exact ones that come to mind when I think about those moments as well. Uh, all right. So we talked a lot about the kind of general structure of storytelling. Let's talk world building and lore. What did you
Okay.
think of the world building and lore in this book?
Yeah, I think this the concept behind the empire at war with a nation of people who exist inside the nation entirely. Um, obviously is not a new concept. Call it civil war or whatever form it takes in lots of stories. One thing I think that the author did really well is the lost knowledge aspect of this.
Hmm.
This is a country that has been riddled with fighting insurgencies for decades or centuries and have all but forgotten why. Which I think is something that's really important to remember, that um, when everybody is dying all around you, history is whatever who survived gets to say it is.
Hmm. Absolutely
But
agree.
so I'd say the best aspect for me in terms of world building is that Forna made it so that this royal family or the people behind the royal family could say whatever the fuck they wanted to say, and that was it. That was what was happening.
I agree. I think that aspect of not only lost knowledge, but propaganda to cover up the lost knowledge being based on those who lived and survived is, I think it showed the power of it. The fact that you can take an entire kingdom and knowing that what we know now is that those people at the top did know everything and they did decide to, well, they decided to build an entire culture around suppressing this information and how effective it was until it literally took an act of God within or gods or goddesses actually to undermine it, which I think is a really underrated way of setting up the power of an institution within a world. Is this It wasn't something, it could have very easily just been everybody died, but it wasn't everybody, it was just enough people. And the way that they set it up seemed realistic, and the fact that they teach this from the ground up, they built a whole ritual, the idea of the ritual giving the killing legitimacy. I thought that was a underrated bit of the world building in this. Is It's not only limiting the information you've got, it shows the brutality of the institution that is trying to be upset, i.e. the king and kingdom, as well as the ruthlessness and the intelligence of the system that they set up as well. It's having an intelligent enemy makes a makes a difference, especially when you treat them as intelligent. And
Yep.
there's a lot of people who are like, who will show not, they will tell not show that somebody is intelligent. And with the king, it's a very similar thing of, they showed that he can put on the charm, because it's not like everybody who is power hungry is going to come off as, punched and gnarly looking. Like,
Yeah.
this is a guy who was a leader of people and knew how to be, or at least act the leader. And when you couple that with a rich bit of lore between the gods and between the goddesses and everything that has been suppressed, there's that lost knowledge aspect being suppressed by this powerful institution makes that lost knowledge aspect, I think, that much more compelling within the story. And I thought that was a cool use of lore to drive plot, which is surprisingly nuanced for something that had a lot of, to use V.S. Drake's term, ham-fistedness within it. So again, I think that's where like the great bones of it come from, though, is Namina clearly had a vision for the world and the lore and magic within it, and I think that aspect of it was actually handled really, really well.
Yeah.
V.S. Drake said she did a good job with creating characters, but they really liked the world. It was a backdrop and not fully fleshed out. What do you think about how well the world itself was fleshed out, though?
Yeah, I think um yeah, so there's not a ton of depth to the world, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Just in part because of the previously mentioned knowledge loss. But also I think, there's a lot of like just hand waving that of things happening, like um I mean, I guess it's a thing for any magic system to kind of hand wave how things work a little bit, but um we don't really see a whole lot about like how the rest of the army works. Like, if this is an army whose sole purpose is to fight death shrieks, how do they suck so bad at it for this long, and where is the rest of the army? Why is the king paying attention to his front lines when we know absolutely nothing else about his army? Didn't he come with a chunk of army?
Mhm.
There's the king who is a royal, but uh, who, where else are where are the other royal, or not royal, but
The other
where are
males
the
that
other where are the other lords and what do you call them? Nobles. Where are the other nobles? Sorry, blanking hard tonight.
oh, oh, I thought you were going for the Jatu, not the nobles. So, but yeah, like what there's clearly a caste system where nobility is a thing, and they aren't really mentioned that much other than to kind of contrast with white hands to show where her station actually is, as opposed to like, because she's initially thought to be a noble, but she's actually a royal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Via Drake, it is a little bit two-dimensional as a backdrop. The world itself, like there's depth to the lore, but the world itself is pretty much, well, yeah, it's a little Avatar, The Last Airbender, not the blue
Yep.
aliens, of like in the north the there's the clearly white people, in the west there's the clearly native american people, in the east there's the clearly asian people, and in the south there's the clearly african people. And that's kind of just, and I get that it comes from the fact that these four goddesses kind of represent these directions and the people that were inhabiting them, but at the same time it does create a very like, here's the map of Faerun or Westeros, let's divide it into four, and all you need to know, because we're going to focus on this one character. So there's a lot of potential there, but it's because it wasn't fleshed out.
Yeah. I think that's part of the fleshing that is lacking too, is we get a lot of the story riding on our main character, and all of our side characters get auxiliary roles of, oh, I need somebody to do this thing real quick, I'm gonna plug this person in and they'll do that, and then back to the background with ye.
Yep, I think the only two who really get like any kind of maybe something extra are White Hands and Britta, right? So why
Yeah.
don't we go in and make this a separate topic then? Let's talk characters.
All right. Yeah, so I had trouble finding the I had trouble sorry, I read Via Drake's comments.
Sorry, that's a good one. Well, for those who just
No, but,
watch,
like, in terms of characters, right?
yeah,
'Cause, like, you had this moment to let the one out the other chick who was riding with them shine
Britta,
while,
and
yeah, Brit
yeah,
shine while our main character was unconscious, and, well, we just skipped right over that.
just like 4 weeks and nothing. All we know is that she ate her food.
Yeah. Um, but even, like, our protagonist, uh, you know, her she lives in the "I'm just an innocent girl who's having things happen to her" persona for a really long time.
Mhm.
Like, I would almost say right up to the end of the book, like, she just lets things happen to her, and we don't really get to see much of her own desires in this book. Um, I liked. Sorry, what was her name? The secretly goddess lady.
Oh, White Hands.
White Hands, thank you. I liked
Yeah,
White
she has like
Hands.
four names, but White Hands is the one we hear the most.
Yeah. Um, like White Hands had clear motivations for why she was doing things. She had very clear personality in the way she did things,
Mhm.
like in the way she lied straight up all the time, and in the way she was just used to using people to get her way. It was something that made her unique as a character, where I feel like almost all of the other characters were just existing in roles.
Yeah, I agree. For the most part, I think almost all of them are just like, I'm the fast one, I'm the edgy one, I'm the lesbian one, I'm the lesbian one's twin sister. Um, which I'm not trying to be like dismissive and reductive, but they are very clearly like everybody has a very specific role, and the only ones that really get anything more are like you said, White Hands. It is and that would be another trope I would say is used well, is the one who knows way more than they're letting on and frustratingly won't tell the main character what it is such a trope. And it annoys the absolute crap out of me, but I think the end of it resolved in a way that made it feel like, okay, yeah, you wouldn't tell somebody who spent their entire life believing that death streaks are terrible and that they are monsters, that you are the mother of all death shrieks, essentially. Um, and yeah, you would only tell them certain information, and she's been proven to only ever give what she thinks is necessary, and that is sometimes detrimental to the cause and is a part of a calculation of somebody who spent centuries being tortured in ways that we can't even imagine. That is a character with depth. We don't see that depth until the very end in full, but that's a part of like revealing your characters. So I thought that she was handled reasonably well. Uh, Decca feels like a story of two characters, kind of. There is that like meek girl who grew up in this area where that's all she ever wanted to be, is just a part of that community, into this like fierce warrior that is now leading a civil war, revolution, whatever, against what were ultimately we find to be usurpers. And in to draw a YA comparison, in like the Hunger Games, that's the kind of uh, Katniss Everdeen transformation that took 3 whole books, and she does it in like 2 chapters. So it's just like all we get is this little flash of like she's annoyed when somebody says something like sexist or shitty to her, and it's played off as this like boiling rage that makes her special above anybody else, and that part didn't feel as earned. And I think it is in part because so much Decca is like a vehicle for the plot in a way that I think, like you said, the plot is happening to her. She is not like riding the wave of it with us as a character. Like
Hmm.
she's not experiencing it as a character. She is the momentum for it. And that kind of tends to take away from protagonists a little bit in how they earn things, because it feels like it's like giving them the Sorry, my mind keeps going. I said we keep talking about the special one, and I keep going to the Lego movie. It's like, let's just give her the let's give her the Craggle. Of but it's yeah, so a lot of the characters are a little bit one note. There are ones I want to know more about. My favorite character, though, honestly, was Britta because she's the only other one who, yeah, she has her role as she is the caretaker. She was the only one when White Hands was just like, I picked you out for these personality traits, where I believed her personality trait when it was revealed of she has this extreme protective instinct. I'm like, I absolutely believe that. This character has been nothing but tied to the community that she constantly creates for herself because she needs people to love and be loved by. That is a character that may have like a specific thing, but it has depth to it. We find out a little bit about I forget which one it is, but the girl who was tortured and freaks out about the lake. There's something there, but that was explained in like a chapter or less of like what she went through, and then like you said, she just kind of disappeared back into the background as soon as that was explained. And Britta and White Hands are the only ones that really get to come out again and really influence our main character in ways that make them feel like well-rounded characters. You get what's the love interest's name again?
I don't.
Yeah, the fact that we're forgetting the names of like these very central characters should tell you a lot, but
Well,
I mean, like,
it was
but
a while
it's
ago too.
fair enough. Yeah, considering that what we were supposed to do this 2 weeks ago, which sorry guys, and thanks for putting up with the delay. um, uh, Keita, right? Yeah, I think it was Keita. Um, he has some depth to him as well, but it also gets kind of played off as a he was broody, but he wasn't as broody in the way that I thought he was broody. And now we like each other. But I do like that he actually gets played as like a supportive person pretty consistently instead of just being a shithead the whole time.
Yeah.
Oh, let's
All right.
see.
So, what do you think was the strongest then? Characters, world building, plot.
Um, I would say world building is the strength, but very specifically the lore and underlying like magic in this world, as well as um the system that is being fought against. Those are the biggest strengths. Is it is a realistic, antagonistic, and systemic issue that would compel a character who presumably has the traits that Deca does to do what she does, and provides a realistic set of compelling problems, either whether it's the king or the institutions themselves, which we find out don't just disappear with the king, and the lore of what happened before of these goddesses and why literal goddesses somehow weren't affecting the world in the way that they used to be. Uh, I think the Death Streaks were a very unique monster, which was also really cool. So, like, those things put world building as the main, as the biggest strength for me. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think world building for me was the strongest. Um, just because I felt the other categories were left lacking. Um, no, the characters were pretty flat except for a couple exceptions. The plot was excessively predictable, but the world building, we had some pretty cool nuggets of, the lost history, current affairs, the gods and their apparently children, or half children, or whatever you want to call them. Um, you know, uh, I was absolutely uninterested in seeing how the story itself was going to end, but I was curious to see more about how the world was going to go. Um, and yeah,
Mhm.
world building. Shrug.
Yep. Well, I'll also say, just to build up the world building, I think the things that really set off the characters, yeah, there's too many one-dimensional characters surrounding a protagonist that is a little bit too Mary Sue for my liking. Um, and for the plot, I think one of the things that kind of put me off about the plot, other than it being predictable, is this is supposed to be a three-book series. This felt like a standalone novel. I don't feel super compelled to, necessarily pick up the rest, because I'm like, the questions I had were basically answered. Um, so at the end, if you're going to build a trilogy, like, maybe this is because it was the very first book published, which is the only reason why I might give not the only reason, but is one of the main reasons why I may end up, well, we're getting into final thoughts territory here. But like,
You want
um,
to just transition to it? You got anything
yeah,
you
we
want
might as well.
to talk about?
I think we've covered a lot of it. There's, unless you had something.
Nah, let's do it. Continue
Uh,
your train of thought and then carry on to your final thought.
um, so I when I finished this book, I knew it was supposed to be a trilogy, but I just didn't have any really compelling questions that I wanted answered out of it, because all of the lore ones were pretty well summed up in that last couple chapters of: why were the goddesses locked up? How are they locked up? What were the death streaks? Why did they act the way that they did? How did they exist? Why were they fighting? And how do we you know how do we upend the system that is oppressing our main character and their people and her people? And it all basically gets resolved. Yeah, they are technically still out there, I guess, but the villain is exposed, and it's just a matter of trusting the author to be able to resolve things that this first book didn't show that they have the understanding of how to make those things compelling. So I might, because there are nuggets in this book that are very, very good in ways that like kept me reading this book. It's because it's not bad. It's just, it is, like I said before, this is a YA novel straight up and down, and it is clearly made for its target audience. And reading as much as we do, we look for a bit more complexity than what I've seen. So ultimately, final thoughts. I would recommend this for anybody who likes, who is in that age range, because I do think it has a good general message at the end of it. It does have some cool lore and some cool world building in it. But I think this would be like, what's the easiest possible YA read that you want? Um, there are some cultural components that I think were pretty interesting too, seeing how like the African inspirations were played in this book. I think those were part of the world building that I found pretty interesting too, and that makes it a little bit different from a lot of YA novels that we see. So yeah, I'd recommend it to its target audience. Not super compelled to keep up with the rest of the series though, personally.
Yeah.
And yeah. How about
Yeah,
you?
um I've been thinking for a while what I wanted to say about final thoughts. I feel like final thoughts is just so final, you know. So, um, no, this book, it it feels like one of those cases where an editor or a publisher should have handed it back and said, "Listen, I think you've got something here. You just need to polish it up a little more." And don't quite turn it in yet because it's not quite there yet, but I want you to work on it and bring it back to me. Um, it
Mhm,
feels more like a first draft than a final draft. And oh, like it feels like all she needs to do is just spend some more time in scenes and give people a little bit more motivation in this story, and it would be
mhm,
a stellar novel.
yeah.
um,
And motivation that isn't a
but
trope.
yeah, but for me, like I enjoy the um living inside of a story and wondering what's going to happen and making guesses and being like, I hope I'm right, or I think I'm right because I'm a genius, really cocky like. And with this book, it was like I didn't even have to hope. Like I was like, all right, 15 pages in, I know exactly how this book's gonna go. And it
Yep.
went exactly like how I thought it was gonna go. So
Yeah, same thing. It was just right from the beginning. V.S. Drake seems to have the same thought as you, as where the hell was her editor? Um, and I think that's a good point, is in a very saturated world of authors, in particular ones that are writing within fantasy and sci-fi these days, it takes a lot to stand out. And there are authors that can do it. I think this, for a first book, is not bad, but there is work to be done that I don't know how this was produced. Like, was this like a self published type of thing that just got picked up by a publisher afterwards, or was this, so there was no editor, or was the editor asleep at the wheel? Either way, there's potential here, and I won't write off Namina as an author, because she clearly has some very good instincts in some regards, but just needs practice with building depth in her characters and filling out a world without over explaining things or hand waving, or going the opposite and hand waving things. And that's just a balance that I think takes experience. Like, as we're fond of quoting Brandon Sanderson, I've seen talks that he talks about with building a world and how you walk that balance. And his biggest advice is to write 3 or 4 books and don't publish them, and then see where you're at. So I don't know how much that was done with this person, but I think this kind of squarely falls into why that was his advice of, you've got some talent, you've got some good ideas, let's let it ferment a little bit, you know.
yeah. Yeah, for me in terms of recommendation, I land squarely in the would not recommend area, even for young adult. Um, this is a highly violent book that doesn't pay off in other areas. I don't feel like it's something that should be appealed to young adults.
Mhm. That that's actually a good point, and I will actually amend my recommendation based on that, because there are books that do it well, like I don't like to do too many comparisons, but like there's a very similar kind of through line in a book called The Poppy Wars by R.F. Kuang. That is a um, that is one that I would use as an example of like a gold standard within like that kind of storyline of chosen one goes to military school only to find out that the world that she's been defending needs to be upended. You know, like that kind of storyline. But and there is violence and all sorts of other things in it. It's treated like YA because the main character is like 16, 17. So like there are ways to do everything that was done in this book and have it be something that would be recommending, but like you said, there's not enough other payout to warrant the pretty freaking brutal scenes that are in this book. Like like
Yeah.
there's some pretty messed up stuff now that you just have me thinking back on all those scenes. I'm like, yeah, those are just really messed up.
Via Strike says the book wasn't good enough to make him want to devote more time to it. Um, it's in a tough crowd. There's a well saturated young adult category out there, and the competition is fierce. Um, but yeah, I think you know Forna has the makings of somebody who can become a great author, and now that she's got her name out there, maybe the next series she'll get published with somebody who will um, let her sit down and breathe it out. I mean, heck, maybe the next two are like that.
Maybe. And V.S. Drake also mentioned this probably making for a good film adaptation. Apparently, a week after the release of the novel, it was announced that it was already optioned for a film adaptation. So we may or may not see that. Um, Because this does have a lot of cinematic feel to it. And you're right. I agree. Namina Forna, I think, is I look forward to seeing what she can bring to the table as she becomes more experienced as an author because there's some really good ideas. She's really good, I think, with overall messaging, and I did like interactions with some of the characters. It's just, especially the stuff that revolved around the sisterhood of things, but I think it got overshadowed because it almost felt like that was treated as separate from the plot when it should have been integral to the plot. Anywho,
Yeah.
um, those are final thoughts. So why don't we get into our wrap up here for the night?
Oh yeah, doing the wrapping up of things. Yes, yes.
Yes.
I am totally prepared. All right, next up, March 7th, The Will of the Many by oh man. I think you guys picked these specifically to make me slaughter names. Uh, um, James Islington?
Islington or Islington, so one of the two.
After that, is April 11th, A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Lagoon. I said it really fast so that you couldn't tell if I said it wrong.
All right. And that's through May.
April.
That puts us through April. May we'll be setting up our we're gonna go May the 4th again, but it is open to all sci-fi, not just um not just Star Wars. Uh, and then we are going to get into um I think we're going to get into June, which oh man, I had a theme written down here and I lost it, so we'll announce it, I guess, next time. Whoops. It was written down and I forgot. It's all right. And then, but we will have our usual beach reads for July, so look forward to that. And sorry for the dead air there for a second. I thought I'd found it, and I didn't. I've got ideas, but they do not apply to summer at all, which is the problem.
Lost Fleet. I don't know, Via Strake. I don't know if we've done the Lost Fleet. I've read the Lost Fleet. That may be a good book. You're right.
Lost Fleet is not one that we have done on this show, to my knowledge, because I have not read it. So could have been on one of those weeks where I was sick or something, but I don't think so, because I usually read those even if I am not actually hosting.
All right. Plugs. No, let's not do plugs. Let's do side pieces and then plugs. How's that sound?
Okay. All right.
Alex, did you read any other books this last month and a half? Chat, did you read any other books this last month and a half?
So finished up the Dungeon Crawler Carl series for the third time. Also started getting into the Warhammer 40K series, specifically the Horus Heresy. Man, if you thought this book was brutal, not for kids, but interesting nonetheless. Uh, if anybody has any recommendations on which book series within Warhammer 40K, please feel free to reach out to us, because there's so many and I don't know where to go once I'm done with the Horus Heresy stuff. And that's already like, I forget how many books, but it's double digits. So not sure I'm going to read them all, but anyways, what were your side pieces, Adam?
Yeah, I for some reason, I should say, I'll preface this with Audible released a new feature recently where they'll start the next book in a series automatically at the end of your book, which a while ago they introduced just starting some random book after you finish a book. But now it's the next book in the series, which is really cool and made it really hard to stop listening to Dungeon Crawler Carl. So I never did.
It just grabs you and it doesn't let go.
Yeah, I re-listened for the show and then I continued listening after that. That's it though. That's all I got.
Oh, and why don't we just do this? I've got a theme. We're doing Pride for June, so all things LGBTQI plus books. So anything fiction or
Okay.
fantasy, sci-fi within that. Done.
Okay.
All right. So why don't we just do our quick outro plugs, and then we'll let you guys get on with your weekends.
Yes. All right, plugs. YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. We're the DM's Table on YouTube. Links below your video if you're watching us on Twitch right now. Otherwise, you're probably on YouTube, so you don't need the link. Audible. That's the way you should listen to audiobooks. Well, okay, there's other ways, but that's one of the ways. If you want to try it out, go ahead and go to dmstable.com/audible to get a free trial and maybe a goodie or two. Speaking of DM's Table, dmstable.com is where you can go to find out everything you would ever want to know about everything that is us. Excuse me. Patreon, please check that out. The link is below your video. We are the DM's Table on Patreon. There's where we vote on what book to read next, and it is a free vote, so you don't even have to throw us money. You should definitely check it out. Again, we are DM's Table on Patreon. We have Facebook and X at DM's Table on X, at the DM's Table on Facebook, and we do have a Discord, but you're gonna have to figure out how to get the link if you really want it, because it's secret and it's definitely not a marketing gimmick to make you ask for it. Anyway, that's all I got.
All right, well, thank you everybody for joining us this delayed episode. It's fun chatting with you as always, and we'll see you next book.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. See you next book.